Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of I Cast Fireball. I'm Thomas, your DM for this podcast, and around the table, I'm joined by...
I am Mickey, and I play Lieutenant Ignis Halcón.
I'm Jacob, and I play Maximus Shans.
I'm Ned Wilcock, and I play Ataraxia Kalian.
And I'm Joshua Lorimer, and I play Buster Bilgewater.
We're here for a Word of Recall, our first of Season 2! Woohoo! Oh, it's good to be talking about Season 2. It's good to be playing Season 2 as well. Mm-hmm. And we are just real excited and happy that you also think it's a good time in Season 2. So thank you again for not only... Yeah?
Can I just say, It's criminal. It's criminal that the Word of Recall is happening before, like, several episodes are about to come out that I feel like will bring so many more questions to the forefront. In my head, there are so many things I want to talk about, and I cannot talk about right now because the episodes aren't out yet.
We're like 4 episodes ahead of what this Word of Recall is about. Oh, man. Well, that'll be for the next one. We'll try not to make it a year out. But we're excited to be here. We're excited to talk about the questions that you submitted. And we're going to do the same format we've done the past few times, where Ned is our resident fate master, as I'm calling him.
Indeed.
Rolling the fate dice and determining what category we're going to be reading from. So do we have the same 3 categories, Ned, or is it anything new?
So we've got our character-specific questions. We've got our campaign moment questions. And then we're going to lump Lonely Thomas questions in with behind-the-scenes questions tonight.
Yes! Not myself only. Great.
And so in that order, if it's a minus, it'll be character, neutral will be campaign moments, and plus will be Lonely Thomas or behind the scenes.
So we've got 22 questions about, so let's jump into it.
Yeah.
All right. Roll number 1. That is a minus. So that is a character question.
I will take the character questions and read them in this voice. No, I won't. Not the whole time.
Awfully bold of you.
It'll be like an old 1920s. Looks like up fast we have... No. Here we go. This is first from Source for Hour, I believe. That's the user who submitted this first question. It says, how do you think your characters for Season 2 are like your characters from Season 1? And how are they vastly different?
You know, we could probably also kind of lump this in with a question that came from Clarity. Do you find your past characters bleeding into your current characters? Yeah. Do you try to keep them separate?
Ooh, that's a good idea. So how are they different and how are they similar?
I think one thing that is definitely similar between my 2 characters is they both like to be the hype man in a sense. There is a certain degree of a desire to nurture and to bolster the people around them. They definitely go about it in very different ways.
I'll say is very Ned, just in general.
Thank you.
As well, so.
But yeah, I like playing a support character. Ataraxia is much, much more a support character than Fleeple is. Fleeple still had his support abilities, but he was also very into immolating stuff. So as opposed to Ataraxia, who has literally 1 damaging spell, and even that is a buffing spell. So
there's also that kind of combination of incredibly dark origins, yet somehow subtly naive character.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Very nice.
I would say...
I think... Go for it, Jacob.
Josh,
She said my name first, Jacob. Sorry, I'm up next. No, go ahead.
For me, I wanted to try and do something very different from Lance. I'd say the similarities, if anything, are just finding a conflict and a backstory that intrigues me. Like, if I was listening to this, I would be interested in what's going on with this person. That's a similarity, but the result is very different, as we'll find out. Mm-hmm. The differences that I really wanted to focus on, Lance was very much, he's a rogue, he's a fighter, but he's very much like, I don't want to be in the middle of it all. Like, I will be shooting from the back, running up real quick, and then trying to... Yep. I'm never going to be the big, hopefully, target of the whole fight. That's the opposite for Max. Max is in the thick of it, but I also wanted to give us some versatility, and because I like to play with that, of being able to do things from a distance, but also up close and personal. And so that's where I kind of focused on the crossbow expert, where, I can actually be right up there in the thick of a fight, but yet have a ranged ability as well. On top of that, Lance was both of my characters don't have very good charisma, but Lance was very much, you could tell, like a strategist and I'm going to think through everything. Whereas I've tried to lean more into Max being, we're just going for it. Like, let's go. Let's make the plan.
I'm just
going
to take that go ahead.
So, yeah, those are a couple different differences that I've tried to weave into this campaign as opposed to the last one.
Awesome. Mickey.
I feel like I always want to make really different characters, and then once I start playing, I'm like, oh, this is actually just kind of risky, isn't it? And I was talking to another friend who does, she plays D&D on a Twitch live stream. I was trying to find, it's Bardic Dice. I was trying to find the name of their
Shout
thing.
out.
But she was talking about how she had this character that had like this certain arc, and then the next character she played also had a similar arc, and then the third one also had a similar arc. And I was like, you know what? If that's what you want to play, you should play that. That's the arc you should play. Like, if that's what you want to do, it's okay. And as I was like talking to her about my character, she's like, can I give you the same advice? And I was like, yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. That I love redemption arcs. I love the crunchy, like melee fighter that just like jumps in the fight and gets in the fight. Playing the really like, I've learned playing, especially with like Jake, Thomas, and Ned, and now with Joshua, like, is another antic on top of it, that you guys are so creative and so chaotic and so fun that I really like to play the straight man in comedy.
Yeah.
Right? That you have to have that realism. You have to have the straight man that like heightens the comedic antics of the other people that are in the scene, or, you know, whatever. And so I feel like I'm trying really hard to keep Malamara and Ignis separate in a couple key ways. But I've also just accepted that there are going to be a lot of similarities because of who I like to play. I'm playing a melee straight man. I don't do chaos. I don't do charisma. So this is just kind of the character I'm going to play. And that's okay. Like, her backstory is totally different. There's a couple very key things that I'm trying to do with Ignis, with especially like the religious zealot and things like that I really want to hold on to. That is different than Malamara, and I'm hoping that those motivations will be different. But I'm also accepting that as much as I want my character to be different because they're different people, I'm the same person. So I'm going to have similar reactions, and there's a certain way that I like to play this game, and some of that's going to bleed through.
It definitely feels like there's less of an element of shame with Ignis than there was with Malamara. Like,
oh yeah,
Ignis is like super proud of her origins and like very,
Yes. So yeah, those the backstory, like the characterization of it's a little bit different. But also, I'm just the straight man in like this comedy, chaotic mess that you guys love to play in, and you're so good at playing in. And I'm happy to be that.
All right, Josh.
I mean, Ralph.
7 episodes of Ralph.
Ralph was a.
Josh only plays wizards on this podcast here.
Here's what's funny is out of the four of us, I didn't change class really, like the
At all.
just subclass. But like, but honestly, I had someone else asking me about this in more of a broader sense across like all the games that I've played. And honestly, I think I used to be closer to Mickey, like in terms of the character I would build. I just want to hit things and be a plot hound. Just be like, it's like if there's a goal we're supposed to accomplish, everyone else can get distracted. I'm gonna beeline it for that carrot that the DM gave us.
Correct.
And pull every lever and open every door. And I don't know if it's because I DM'd and got kind of like more familiar with the rules of the game and more comfortable with spells, that I just started leaning into, the higher end the more complex casting classes. I love playing an artificer. I love playing a wizard. I will say what's been nice about Buster is for a while my characters were all very duplicitous. Like, shout out to Side Character Quest, but he's been releasing an arc that I recorded. I recorded that arc around the same time I recorded with you guys with Ralph. It was like the same period of time, like 2 years ago, and it's just releasing now. The edit's like a 8-episode arc, but that character's like really probably one of like the darkest characters I've ever played. And I went through this period of time where I was playing very duplicitous characters, and Buster has been kind of my return to like dipping my toes and caring again, and like being a a character with a little more heart and less jaded, maybe is the right term.
Right on. Well, some good answers. Shall we go on to our next one?
Yeah.
Yes, Fate Master.
That is a plus.
All right, Thomas, are you ready?
Oh no! Yes.
Mormos said, how do you keep track of initiative order, especially when there are a lot of individuals to account for, be they players or NPCs? They said when they tried to run an encounter, they found themselves mixing up enemies and just had to wing it, which they were afraid might have hurt their experience. So how do you keep track of so many people?
Here's a great thing about playing an ICF. There's a lot of things we can fix in post. And so
very true.
Mickey can fix a lot of my mistakes. So I feel your pain, Mormos. And some early battles in season 1, we couldn't edit it or fix it in post because it was just so extensive, the mistake. And it was just like, yeah, that really hurt. That really hurt. And it really just took learning. It really took making the mistake, burning yourself on the fire, so to speak, and then being like, okay, don't do that. Don't do that again. And then what can I do different? There's some really amazing tools out there. Roll20 is fantastic because the computer, you can allow some of its features to where the computer will take care of some of that stuff for you. But if you're playing in person, that's when I've also learned a trick to cut up note cards and to fold them and then to just have a bunch of names written on them with stats on the back of everybody I might think is in the party that's going to be in a battle and all the NPCs. And then I set them on top of my Dungeon Master screen in order from right to left so everybody sees. So the front is just the name, but then if you have 5 goblins and who's Goblin 1 versus who's Goblin 5, that's when you have to get a little bit creative. And so sometimes I'll throw a D20 dice that's red and it has the number 5 on it in a spot as opposed to a green die with number 1 on it. So you just learn and you keep going forward. The important thing in those instances is not to get too bogged down in the rules. And if you start feeling that as a dungeon master of this is getting too into the weeds, start erring on the side of your players to allow them to essentially start winning so that you get the momentum back of, oh, this is really fun, this is really cool. But ultimately, it's prep. Prep is going to help and save you.
Prep.
Some good practical advice.
All right, next question. Another plus.
Excellent.
Oh, no.
What? Captain Blue Nova said,
Yeah,
what is your
Captain Blue.
favorite part about podcasting as this form/medium? What's your favorite thing about
I
it?
really like how you can fix it in post.
I love fixing it.
That's really our motto.
Pretty great.
In this podcast. Let's just fix it in post.
There's a lot about that.
No, when it comes to podcasting compared to live streaming Twitch or doing a YouTube channel, I really like how Mickey is just really smart and has worked really hard to be able to fix things in post. And not only just get rid of those random edits that just happened. Oh, and if you don't know what just happened, podcast listeners, go look at our Patreon, instead. But instead of fixing that, but to be able to add the sound effects, that makes it so thematic. I really like D&D when it's thematic, and podcasting allows for that, as opposed to a live stream where it would be on me to be able to have a soundboard and know which one to use, just when to use it, and etc.
Could I actually add something to that real quick? I think it's hilarious listening to what Mickey has done to the episodes, because usually, in terms of she does a great job, obviously, but there's sometimes where I got a sense of a scene and then listening to it back, I'm like, oh, that's very different than the way that Mickey produced it. I think I remember in season 1 early on, there was something where I was like, oh, this is an in-depth, super serious conversation. And then listening to it later, I can't remember exactly what Mickey did to it, but basically put music over it to make it silly. And it was something like that. And I'm like, oh, I guess that is kind of stupid. But in the moment, I was like, oh yeah, this is a serious scene. So it's surprising to us too. And it throws some curveballs of being able to kind of set the mood even after we've recorded of, okay, really the ebbs and flows of our story.
I think too, probably the thing that I think gets forgotten in this format of creating a story is it's incredibly episodic, and the streams tend to be like streaming D&D shows tend to be like 3 to 4 hours long, and re-listenability is super hard.
It is hard.
It's like if you weren't there for the initial release, it's difficult to jump in. Whereas with this kind of episodic format, it's very accessible, and I think even just as someone who loves like revisiting moments that like I've experienced in this show and other shows, like I don't know exactly what time it was, but I know it was around these episodes. Like it's really easy for me to find a spot and remember like a cool moment or laugh. Whereas with a big giant stream, it's like, I don't know, it's somewhere in there, but like
somewhere in there.
Somebody clipped it.
You hope somebody clipped it. Yeah. But like, so I like amongst everything everybody else has said, that's one of the things I've come to really appreciate.
I think what I appreciate most about creating in this medium comes from what I love most about consuming this medium. And it's like the sense of comfort, the sense of consistency that comes with a podcast, where I think of all the mornings when I wake up and I'm like, oh, I'm so tired. I've got so much I need to do today. But I look at my phone, it's like, oh yes, a new episode of My Brother and Me just dropped. And I'm like, okay, I can just listen to this. I can zone out for a little bit, hang out with these people in a parasocial-ish kind of way for a little bit. And it's such a great way to bring a little light into an otherwise dour kind of situation. And it's always really, really touching, the instances when someone comes back to us and says, man, every time I listen to your podcast, it just brings a little spark of light into my day. And it's like, okay, the thing that we are doing for you is exactly what podcasts do for us, and it's why we wanted to create these podcasts.
In the first place. Absolutely.
Yep. I think that I agree with, for me, the podcast, I like that it's, you can revisit those moments of your friends doing cool things, of your friends telling this story, of that playing for years at a table that I'm like, man, remember that one time where this other person said this other thing and it's gone. Like it was so ephemeral, which is, there was a beauty to ephemera, right? Like it was ephemeral. You had to be there. And once we said it, it was gone. But this kind of content, we're able to go back and we're able to have those memories and we're able to have a permanent thing to hold on to, where we didn't just say things to the ethos and it just vanished, that we do have some kind of recorded history of us playing the game for years and years and years.
I don't know if I'll ever play an at-home D&D campaign where I don't record it, to be honest.
We haven't.
It's just
we
like
usually
my
do voice
phone.
memos,
We do.
At this point in our lives.
Before this, me, Jacob, and Mickey, and then our spouses, we all played Storm King's Thunder, and this is actually where we tried starting to record a podcast with one mic in the center table, and
that's cool.
They're rough. Those recordings are rough.
Somewhere. Those
Says the
recordings
editor.
are somewhere.
I still have them.
Yeah. There's this great quote by Brendan Lee Mulligan when he was on the Critical. He did like a brief stunt with the Critical Role casts, like some kind of
in their main campaign
backstory thing. I never actually watched the full thing, but I know that this is where the quote's from. It's like at the end of the whole series, and he says, "The world may never know what you've done, but it did happen, and it did matter." And it's like this great, like. But when Mickey, you were talking about like just having it there, it's like it exists on this space that you can revisit and remember. Like that quote hit me and I got goosebumps. I was like, yeah, it's like, it is really cool. Like no matter how many people ended up ever listening to that stuff, like it's like we did it, and I can go back and I can look at it, and it does matter. Like it did matter to me, at least, So very cool.
Well, that was a nice ideological question. Now we got 18 left. Oh boy,
we're getting through.
Here we go. Oh boy, okay.
20 minutes in.
Another plus.
2 questions
Another
down.
plus.
Hey! Oh, no. Thomas, Ben Marty wants to know that in the episode where we encountered that water elemental in Rickety Hake's island, we talked about trying to get them in the party. Was there ever a chance that could have happened? Would you have ever allowed that to happen? And if so, how could that have been done?
Heck no. Was I ever going to allow that to happen? I always will say yes to my players if they push and if they're like, hey, Thomas,
he's a cool
we
DM.
would really actually enjoy this element, but I would so it wouldn't be a direct like, let's take the water elemental stats from the monsters guide. It would be all right, we got to homebrew some sort of like level 4, level 5 thing for this water elemental, so it's just not totally overpowered. But I also have agency where I can tell them, being like, hey, this is not somebody who seems like they want to go with you, but if they were going to keep pushing it, then we would have figured something out.
You guys heard it here first. If we ask hard enough,
you'll get it.
and ask often enough.
We want
Bully Dan.
Suikoden as a D&D game.
Yeah.
Someone will understand that reference.
All right. Next up,
If you get that reference, drop it in our general thread in the chat.
yeah. All right. Next up, guess what? That's another plus.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so this question will, I think, appeal more to our patrons who can see us recording. So if you'd like to see the recording of this episode, here it is. If you, Captain Blue Nova again asked, what is your recording setup like? Do you have special microphones, anything tech, sound, acoustic related? How do you record video versus audio? So there's a lot of, Joshua, there's a lot of, how do we record our audio? And I think all of us right now have Shure microphones, right?
Yes.
Shure M7.
That's a sure thing, Mickey.
We all have the
Inspiration.
Shure MV7 microphone.
Yeah.
It's a pricey microphone, but thank
sure
goodness
is.
that
We
have.
did not start off with it.
No,
Yes.
it's not.
That's very important to know.
Nobody
yes.
does. Nobody really
If you go
does,
back and
yeah.
listen to the first 50 episodes of season 1, it's very clear that not all of us are using these kind of
Well,
microphones.
Jacob
we
didn't
started
get
out
it
with like
until like
$50
episode
ones.
100.
Yeah,
we
it
were,
was right at
we
the
were
very end of season 1.
pretty through, but we manipulated some of the settings to make it a little better. But I definitely had
Yeah.
the
We all like started
crappiest
like
microphone
$50
for a while.
Amazon
Yeah.
mics.
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
Go back and listen to like the first episodes of like Sneak Attack or I Cast
Because
Fireball.
you just had
like,
the one mic in
we
a kitchen,
recorded in a
right?
kitchen. That was the first
Oh,
episode.
that's terrible.
The first 2
And you can
episodes
hear
were
it.
in a kitchen. Yeah, with just like those like cheap like, it's like a $30 set of like
Yep.
three mics.
Yeah.
That look like toy mics really, like, and they're yeah, it was. But that's
awesome.
Yeah, everybody starts somewhere rough, and I think it's good. Leave the rough stuff up. If you had a rough beginning, don't delete it. Like, let people see it.
Yeah.
That's
where
nice
it all
of you. I want to
begins.
delete ours so badly.
Don't make it. I will not allow
For
you.
more of the setup, I know,
know.
Thomas is in his basement, Ned's in
Yeah.
his side room, Josh is in the attic, I'm in the walk-in closet,
Literal closet.
and Mickey, where are you at, Mickey?
I'm just in a bedroom.
You're
She's
the
in an
spare
alley.
bedroom.
She's in
It's
the back
actually
alley.
in my son's
Diagonally.
Brick
diagonally.
behind her. Yep.
No, I actually recorded in my son's bedroom, and so I put up a pack and play in the basement, and so he has to sleep down there while we're recording.
Oh.
But yeah, Joshua has
Sacrifice.
some sound things for a while. Ned was in a box he made
Ned
of
was in a
himself.
tent. That's right.
Ned was hotboxing for a
Yeah,
while.
hotbox tent.
Yep.
He got like movers blankets, right? It was
Yeah,
wasn't
so-
movers
That's what I
blankets,
still
so he
have
like
behind me.
built a whole thing around him
Yep.
and like
yeah.
had a tent.
Yeah, a thing that we've discovered as we've been able to kind of start upgrading our equipment is like if your microphone isn't as high quality, then it does help to have like some sound baffling stuff going on.
Yes.
I still have some moving blankets that I have hung up behind my computer. Josh has like actual sound baffling behind
Yeah,
him.
he does.
But when I upgraded my mic for the first time from like a cheap one to one that was a pretty significant chunk of money, like if you are recording and you look at the empty space, like the noise that's going on in the background, the difference between the cheap mic and the nicer mic, how much background noise it was picking up, it was an immense difference. And then
Yes.
I upgraded from that one to the one that I have currently, and it's like there's practically no background noise at all that it's picking it up.
Yeah.
Correct.
So if you have the opportunity to move up to a nicer mic, like a dynamic microphone, I think especially, you don't need to know like the technical stuff between the difference between like a condenser mic and a dynamic mic, but as long as you know to look for a dynamic microphone, those do a really good job of isolating just your voice from the background noise.
Yep.
And we just have the USB ones.
Yeah.
Most of us just have USB ones right into our
We
computer.
have the converter. Yep.
Yep.
As for our video versus audio, everybody but Jacob, I think we all use Audacity, right?
No,
Jacob
I
still
use
uses
Audacity
GarageBand?
now.
No.
Audacity, we're all on
'Cause of my
Audacity now?
I use Audible.
No, Ned-
not Audible.
Oh, Audible.
Ned
uses-
Audition.
Audition.
Yeah,
Audible's
Josh
the
and
audio.
we're
listen to
fancy.
audiobooks.
Josh and I are fancy
Adobe.
Adobe Creative Cloud people, so we can
Yes,
use Audition.
you have your
Yeah.
Adobe Cloud.
Little note for you Adobe Creative Cloud people, if you've got it, even if your mic isn't fantastic, but you have a decent recording space that has like you're at least getting like okay audio without too much noise, the AI enhancing stuff that Adobe's doing within Premiere is bonkers. It's absolutely disgusting how like it levels the
good it
audio
can be.
and cleans it up and denoises it. It sounds really good.
Incredible.
So that's
So yeah, if you're fancy,
worth a
you can
note.
buy programs. The rest of us, we just use free Audacity.
There is a pay to play element to
Absolutely.
recording audio.
Yep.
you always have to balance the financial side of like making content.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
but yeah, we started out $50 mics from Amazon, free GarageBand or Audacity, and
Using Levelator and
using
all that.
Levelator, also another free program. Our videos, we actually use Streamlabs. I recorded off my computer. It's very common with Twitch streamers. Another free program. I'm all about the free programs. So it can podcast on a budget if you want to. And if
woman
you
of the
have
people.
Special extra stuff, you slowly start upgrading, especially as the farther we've gotten into this and the more people that have reached back toward us, is that what I'm trying to say? That fans have come back and said, hey, we like what you're doing. And those incredible people who've been willing to join our Patreon, that's one of the things that we did with some of our first Patreon stuff has been we upgraded Jacob's mic. And we use a lot of we have it in savings to do our Podbean and our website and things like that. And so fans showing us love back then allows us to upgrade and get better things and better projects and keep it going without using just our own money.
Yeah.
It's pretty nice.
If you're debating between upgrading your video or your audio, prioritize audio, please.
Audio
Yeah.
always. Audio always.
What's our next question, Ned?
All right. Next question is a blank.
What does that go to?
Joshua.
That goes to Josh for a campaign moment question.
Aha! Campaign moment question. This one comes to us from Mark.the.rock/actual vampire.
Yeah, so we had a couple people who asked basically the same
Similar
question.
questions.
Yeah, so
So they both asked in various ways, what has each person's favorite character moment/interaction been thus far?
Up
It's up
till
to
we left
episode
Rickety
20.
Hank, guys.
talk about his favorite.
Rickety Hakes. When the
Act
Assassin's
one.
Creed
Act
There's
title
some things
screen.
coming up right now that I'm editing that I wish we could talk about.
There's
Okay,
there's
Rickety
great
Hakes.
moments to come.
Go.
There are excellent moments to come, but yeah.
well, I usually go very off the cuff with my performance as Ataraxia, but there was one moment that I did make sure I wanted to spend some time beforehand thinking of how I wanted to do it, and that was the moment when we captured Cooper the Bear and the other insurrectionists. I
Was that no
made
remorse?
sure that I planned out that bit about not having any remorse, and it seems like it landed pretty well, so I'm glad I
So
prepared
brilliant.
for
One of my
it.
favorites, yeah.
Yeah, that was critical.
So that's my favorite Ataraxia moment.
I think one of my favorite moments so far has been when Max is sitting up. Oh wait, yeah, okay, that's still part of it. When right after we talk to the water elemental and we go back to the ship, and Max is thinking about like he's writing in his journal and he like says all the characters and like writes notes about them because it's such a Jacob thing to do, and I really love the way that Jacob plays. He's like so attentive to characters, and so when he as a character makes a judgment call or like does a soliloquy about how his character feels about other characters, you're so good at it, and I love hearing that because I'm like, oh, that's what his character feels about my character. So then I like start thinking like more critically about how that plays into it and how it plays into the relationship. I think Jacob's a great player at doing character soliloquies and also like starting RP encounters that are like let us know how his character feels about our characters. So I loved it when Max was writing. I remember the Ignis one was like the weak strong because of the crying. It was just like, oh, it's so good.
My favorite moment has been us choosing the captain. I thought that was really cool. Where, like, because I was like, maybe we should
yeah.
just roll
Yeah.
dice, and
Episode
it was
one.
cool that everyone's like, yeah, let's do it, let's go down for it, and that could have gone any way. We literally could be now
Any way.
in our season, and Ignis is the captain, or Buster's the captain, or Mac.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
It could have gone any way, but I couldn't have wrote it better. That literally, that
Yes.
that
I love it when the
Ataraxia's
dice
captain.
What
tell
you
the
just
story.
said, what you just said, Jacob, I feel like is a consistent theme for me throughout this whole season so far. Is I couldn't have wrote these like moments. I couldn't have like. There have been just such great, like, interesting, dynamic, like, interactions. I'm gonna pick out for me the moments that make me giggle the most, and it has to be a clean toss up between Helmsman Timmy or Tommy.
Yeah.
I was literally gonna say
It is
my
Tim,
moment was
in fact.
It is Tim. R.I.P. Tim.
I get so tickled. I think I re-listened to that whole sequence multiple times just because I was so shocked that it actually happened, and then I actually didn't know his name.
I can't remember his name.
I was literally going to say that because for myself, because not only was it just a hilarious moment, it to just be like, all right, Josh, this is what happens, and just see Josh's face like, and like have him like keep discovering how season 2 is gonna work. It was fun.
You'd think that little like moment early on would have clued me into like how like gut-wrenchingly Thomas will role play with me, and any yes and I give him, he'll yes and right back at me, and like and so that keeps biting me, man. I'm like I'm not used to DMs being willing to go as crazy as I am with the moment, and it's terrifying. But the other moment that makes me giggle consistently, and I have listened to on repeat, is is Jacob having to translate for the water elemental, and he's like, what the hell? He's this. They agree.
Oh boy.
Yes.
I thought you were gonna say the birds.
birds
I
were
just
good.
remember
The birds are great.
I know
The
that
birds are
everybody
great.
love the birds.
But I tear up giggling to myself at him trying to translate for everybody. Is and it's Ned being like incredibly,
Eloquent
He's very good at busting out a monologue on the fly that's just
Yes.
like incredibly beautiful. And then Jacob's like, how am I supposed to translate that?
And remember it, because Ned like says it, and I'm like, I gotta remember all that. No, I'm just no.
He agrees with you.
Yeah.
It's a slight pause. He agrees with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, I'll never forget what's his name.
Yep. Gotta love what's his name.
So good. All right,
right.
next one.
We got another minus.
Alrighty, that's a character question. All right, this is from a user. We've never encountered this user, Joshua Lorimer. Asked the question. No.
Lorimer. Yeah,
Asked the
Lorimer.
question: what was each season 2 character voted most likely in high school?
That's an excellent question.
Well, Ataraxia's not old enough to go to high school.
That's
so
right.
he's out of the running.
It's a hypothetical question, Ned.
Most likely to
Hypothetical.
keep his baby face.
Yep. Most likely to get unrightfully charged with drug possession.
Yep. I was gonna say something related to hey man, yeah.
I could see Max somehow being like something like most likely to fight a bear or something like just like is just gonna do something great, or like most likely to
Yes.
And there's just a picture of him and a bear in the yearbook,
or like just like
actually
most likely to
punching
like
each other.
to like be on the reality series alone, like just do something crazy, like out of the norm, like you're just a risk taker who's just going for something. So yeah, something like that.
I think maybe Buster would be like, most likely to drown due to carrying too much gold on his person.
Most likely to turn out like Scrooge McDuck.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Or like,
like-
an unfortunate Scrooge McDuck.
Most likely to die for money. Just
To
check
die
his-
by
die
plunder.
for money.
And we all know Ignis most likely to host Love Island.
Obviously.
I was thinking like most
Obviously.
likely to lead a crusade.
I was thinking most likely to start a cult.
Dude,
start
Start
a
a
crusade.
good one. Start a cult, such a good one. I was like the emo kid in school. What do we give there?
Yeah,
That's it. That's it. Thanks, Jacob. That's what I needed.
And you just were hanging out with yourself because it was your fate shadow.
Yeah, that's right. Just me and my
Oh,
shadows.
man.
Yeah.
Just
so
me
funny.
and my shadow.
All right, next one, Ned.
Okay. Next up is a blank. That's a campaign moment question.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
This one comes to us from Girdle Rock. What is something your character wants to know about one of the other players' characters?
Player to player.
Rickety Hake. We're leaving Rickety Hake's Island.
Dang it.
That's
So
yeah.
many things that have come to light since then.
Here's I'll answer very very
I have
easily and succinctly.
Yeah.
I think Buster would love to know what on earth the Ignis's shadow versions of herself are, and that will remain relevant for a good long while.
Yeah. Ignis for sure wants to know about ataraxia because he says he's 13 and then he whips out the monologues and whips out the no pity and just these things that just don't feel like he's really 13 years old. That there might be something else happening.
Might be.
For Max, there's oh man, there's a lot that's about to come out, and that I have even brewing in my head right now. But not to go that direction, but going back to the Rickety part. I think Max's when we left Rickety, with his interactions, especially with Ignis, I think Max's main question in that moment is, who hurt you? Like, who hurt you to get you to be what you are right now? That's, I think, Max's at least most prevalent question in his mind.
There's an answer for that.
And do they look like Sandara? That's the real.
I think that's
And are they a cleric
that's
for
a question
Beshmar?
Max has right now.
There's answers for those questions.
Yeah, I think ataraxia wants to know what Max left behind.
Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah, just that.
Yep, those are
Such a
good questions, guys.
I do feel like I feel like every time I step outside of playing in the show, I feel like our three characters, me, Jacob, and Mickey, should get together and be like, is it okay that we've put a lot of responsibility on a child? Like, should we feel some level of that? Was this a healthy decision we all made as grown adult people?
Fate made the decision, Josh.
Should we just jump ahead to another campaign moment question?
Let's do
Yeah,
another
let's do it, let's
campaign
do it.
moment. Yeah.
This one comes
Let's go.
from Joshua Lorimir. who
And
asks,
we should say somebody else in the Discord said they had the idea for the question.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. What
Somebody
was their
else.
name?
Good
I
job,
think it
somebody
was-
else.
Was it Ernagana?
That sounds
I
like
could have
it.
been. They're on there a lot.
Ernagana 999.
Yep.
Yeah, so what would be different about the Satyr song if Fate had chosen one of the other PCs to be captain?
Yeah, what indeed? Well, if Ignis would be running a much tighter ship,
The Colt.
And,
the Colt.
And a lot of
the
those
Colt.
people would be dead for sure.
lot
They
of
would just
hanging
be off the
Oh,
ship.
100%.
And there would be no third chances for anybody.
Well, there's no third chances for anybody in the campaign that did happen either.
that's true. But there'd be a lot of like enthusiastic NPCs that would no longer be on the ship.
There'd be
For
a lot of
sure.
NPCs that would not be on the ship for sure. And the ship would be going in a different direction.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that not the like
Different mission.
morale of it. I think that the boat itself would be heading in a different direction than the current.
Different goals.
Different goals.
Not heading to Goat's Head just because it has a funny name.
Because it just has a funny name. Yeah. Nope. She has different goals. I think the Satyr song would have been like, forget what Rickety Hake says. We're going over here.
I think if Max was the captain, he just leans. Everyone's leaning into kind of what they like. I think Max would be like, "Where's the biggest, baddest creature in this side of the sea, and let's go take it on. Let's
A
go take it.
monster hunting
Where's
ship.
is there
Kraken.
any
Go get some
Krakens in here? Are
Krakens.
there any? What is it? The
Yeah.
You
dragon
got a
turtle?
Are there any
giant.
Krakens
in
Let's
there?
do it.
I think that's what Max would be doing.
I think it's anybody's guess whether it would be within a week, a month, or a year. if Buster was captain, another mutiny would definitely occur.
But they would have come and talked to you about it first.
He's so terrible at managing the relationships of the crew and everybody, and he doesn't have the same kind of, presence and command that Max or Ignis would have. So I think he would just engender a lot of frustration and disappointment from his crew.
And they'd take over and he wouldn't even know.
He would almost embrace the mutiny.
Yeah, you got some points.
I feel like at
we
that
know it's
point,
fine.
Buster would have been laying or sleeping on his pile of gold when they came in and been like, hey man, you just gotta go.
Yeah,
That's valid.
you're like,
That's
all
valid.
right, hey, listen, you're not gonna kill me. That's great. Actually, I'm happy to serve whoever you guys picked to be captain.
Oh,
next."
boy.
That's like he really just would have slimed his way away as a coward and uncertain. Yeah,
Hey, you need a navigator?
yeah, really.
So what you're saying is, if Buster had been captain, Ataraxia probably still would have ended up captain.
Yeah, I think to some degree, I think there's no way on
Actually,
earth Buster
Ignis would have ended up captain.
I still remember the way I
Ignis would have
felt.
taken over.
You have it's like you're thinking about a friend. Like you're like, oh, I would hate for them to have to experience that. Is kind of the way I was feeling about Buster, and how am I gonna role play this if Jacob rolls me with that dice?
Yeah.
Because I don't like the idea of Buster stepping into that role. It would be bad. At least where he is now would be very bad.
I gotta say, I was really surprised, when we're going into it, we're talking about the pros and cons of each person being the captain, and I'm just stuck on the idea of I'm 13 years old, who's going to respect that? I had, completely written it out of my mind that Ataraxia might be the captain, and so... after we had that episode and the die said what it said, and you all were like, thank goodness it chose Ned. I'm like, I did not realize that. Okay. Well, here we go.
Yeah. Everyone being like, please,
Yeah, we were all like,
please. Very Travis from Critical Role not wanting to actually be a captain of the ship as well, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, man. Let's do another question.
Next question is a minus. Character specific.
Questions. All right, the next one is from Definitely Not Batman 72. Definitely Not Batman
Definitely
says,
not.
is there anything /mechanic /alignment / etc. about the characters y'all are playing now that you haven't played before, or that you have played before and you're excited to play again?
Mine is pretty straightforward in that Ataraxia is actually a repurposed character. Just like how Fleeple was a character that I had played briefly in a home game that Thomas was running, Ataraxia was the first character that I ever finished a campaign with as a player. My friend Christian from over at Improv Tabletop ran that. And the only other character that I've completed a campaign with was Fleeple. So... here we are. Only I cast Fireball characters that actually get to complete a campaign, it looks like. But yeah, he was just such a delightful character to play the first time that I wanted to bring him back, and I'm really enjoying it.
For Max, first time I ever played D&D, I was a ranger. And rangers get a lot of knock. If you want to go learn more about rangers, you can check out our Crunch Squad episode around them. But one thing that I learned very quickly when I first played is rangers can actually be pretty heavy hitters if you gear them right. And so I was like, I want to be a ranger to be able to have access to some spells, but I want to hit things hard. And especially with the Beastmaster class, you definitely, as you start leveling up more and more, you definitely can have a big effect in attacking, especially kind of maybe a big boss. In focusing your...
You talking about Monster Slayer or Beastmaster?
Sorry. Thank you for correcting me. Monster Slayer, yeah. For Monster Slayer, you can definitely have a big hit when you're probably facing off of bosses.
For me, Ignis, I think I've talked about this before a little bit, that she's also she's a reskin of a character that I've been developing. So I played her in a couple of one-shots. Her name has changed. Her alignment, almost everything about her has changed. So it feels like I have played, but have never played this version of her. So all of it is completely different. I was really interested in playing a punchy fighter that wasn't a monk. Religion is something that is in the world but is not normally touched on very much, and so I thought it'd be fun to play a zealous character that is highly religious and and I need to play up that way more than I currently am. And her evil.
What does that mean?
Because as I've been listening back, I'm like, I can ramp some of that up.
Oh no!
And like the evil
Here we
alignment,
go.
how do you play like a lawful evil character while you're still in a group setting without completely
That's
going
new
off
information,
and doing
Mickey. That's
things?
new information you
that's
just
new.
dropped.
World
talking
Cup
about
just
podcast
revealed.
shit.
Boom, boom.
That none of that changes anything that we were doing. So,
Come at me.
so there's so much that I packed into Ignis that I'm so excited. And so yes, all of it, everything, every mechanic, every alignment, my class, my race, everything is new to me because I wanted to play all of those different things, even though I've played elements of them in different like one-shots and small campaigns, but I've never run a full character with all of these things.
That's super cool. I can't wait for all of your guys' like character dive episodes, like I did with Jacob for Buster. I'm very looking much forward to those. For Buster, mechanically, class-wise, alignment, it's all new ground for me. I don't think I've played a character
Nice.
with any of the same exact things. I'm used to playing like lawful characters, and this is a neutral good. So I've done good characters, but I've never done neutral good as an alignment. And the divination wizard is super, super cool and fun. And Thomas has like used it in such a really crazy, fun way that like I get to like have these visions of moments, and very, very
Yeah,
cool.
that was another cool moment. That was really cool.
Like learning where the chimera came from, and
Yeah.
the thing that I think that excites me about Buster more than anything is I didn't write a backstory for him. I have bullet points of ideas of like what he's experienced. I'll write like 10 pages and try and fully flesh out who the character is before I start playing. And I've gotten into this kick of where I like just kind of having very spark notes of who the character is and letting the actual playing of the character kind of define it. And it feels like I'm on a bit of a ride. I don't really know exactly where the character's going either. And
Cool.
it's it's super exciting.
Yeah. Next question.
All right. That is a plus.
Excellent. Thomas. Definitely not Batman 72 and Actual Vampire at some point said similar questions, and they both want to know what has been the most challenging part of adapting an adventure from Pathfinder to 5e, and has there been anything that was surprisingly difficult and or surprisingly easy to shift over?
Good question.
Mechanics.
I know that's a good question.
Pathfinder's completely different. Just there's really not a whole lot that is the same when it comes to the crunchy mechanics of like CR level and gold even. Pathfinder deals with a ton more gold and plentiful magic items in the world of Galarian compared to the world of Faerun and 5e. And so you can't do a direct one-to-one translation of that either. And so that's been very difficult. And ship combat has been really difficult.
That's a
and
teaser.
will be revisited. Will be revisited fairly soon. So
Oh yeah, as far as differences between the world in the two, I mean, it's one fantasy world to another, so it's kind of one-to-one in that regard.
Sure.
But I don't know, I've talked before about how much I love Galarian as sort of a base fantasy setting as opposed to the Forgotten Realms. It feels more lived in, and I think that comes from the history that Paizo has as a publisher. The Forgotten Realms was kind of just built piece by piece as it went along. But when Paizo was developing Galarian, they were like, okay, we've got this new Pathfinder campaign setting that originally was for D&D 3.5 before they adapted it over to Pathfinder, the actual role-playing game. And so they had the foresight to go into it saying, this is going to be our kitchen sink fantasy campaign setting. We want everything to feel interconnected. We want there to be history. We want to know how the different nations have interacted with each other in the past. And so it feels very vibrant to me in a way that Forgotten Realms feels kind of samey in a lot of ways.
Sure.
yes, And there's a lot. Galarian, the world in general, is so huge, and every single section is very well fleshed out. And so a lot of their adventure paths can be very thematic at that point. I mean, you've got traditional fantasy, you've got cults, you've got horror, you have devils, you have pirates, and you've got Kingmaker, where you are literally just creating your own kingdom from scratch. And so there's a lot that makes Galarian awesome, but converting it to 5e is hard.
Yeah, even just like the skill list is so different between Pathfinder and 5e.
True.
Yeah, you don't have a diplomacy skill in 5e or knowledge nature.
This will be the last thing I say. With it being a 3.5 type system where it was more brutal to the players, right? There's some skill checks in the Skulls and Shackles where it says if the player has has a knowledge Cheliax skill, not just like knowledge history or knowledge culture, it's knowledge Cheliax skill. Then they get this information. It's like, who on earth would spend their valuable resources to learn to create this? Yeah, and so there's a lot of things where but that's a lot easier as well. So that's the second part of the question. That's easy to kind of like lump them together into a knowledge or history check. So that is a strength.
All right, next question is a minus.
Character questions. All right, here we go. We have from Actual Vampire asking another question. What would your characters dress up as Halloween? What are their costumes? I'll answer real quickly for Max. The furs and skins of my enemies. That's what he would do.
Yep.
Somebody's
Go
already
Ted,
wearing.
going on. Here we go.
Boom.
Yes. Ignis would not celebrate the pagan ritual Halloween. She would find that vulgar and would refuse.
What
to
she would do
participate.
is she would dress up in her most religious garb, and then everyone would be like, cool costume.
That's right.
And she'd be like, dang it.
Buster would 100% dress up as Ignis, so I think that works out perfectly.
Yep.
I think Ataraxia would dress as a sad clown.
Aw.
Yeah. Yeah, that tracks. That tracks.
It's like it's ironic because I can't be sad.
Yeah. All right, next up, another minus.
Alrighty, our next question is from hunter.likes.caffeine. This is a big old question, so buckle up. It's specifically looking
Hunter.
like it's headed toward Mickey's way. It says, how do you go from integrating traits and abilities from one class into another without it becoming overpowered or more or less a multi-class? This is referencing Mickey's character Ignis and having the ability to make unarmed attack in a similar way to how monks do, but Ignis is a fighter. I love the mechanics and how it ties with Ignis and the character, but what would be a good way, really, to do that for other characters without taking it too far?
Okay, I want to answer first, and then I want Thomas to answer as a DM, because I think that this is heavily connected to working with your DM. So, partially for Ignis, the unarmed attacks, and that's all part of her fighter class. It's actually in her subclass that she's able to do these unarmed strikes, especially when she doesn't have any other weapons and armor, it boosts it. But in talking to Thomas, he allowed me to use the monk's dexterity modifier instead of the fighter using strength, which allowed me to create a different look to a character. And so for me as a player, I love having a DM that's willing to have that conversation. And I was very willing. I think I, as a player, needed to be willing to hear out my DM. And if they said no, like be able to accept that or to be able to talk about it, even if the answer comes out to be, I don't think that's a good idea. But having that dialogue between player and DM is really important. But also as a player, it's fun to have overpowered characters. It is. But also I like to play this game. And if you're just too overpowered, it stops being fun to play the game. I specifically create characters with weaknesses or things that are not max min because it creates these moments of not doing the best at certain things. So for me, I tried to not be overpowered by just being aware of what's happening in the situation and recognizing that sometimes that needs to be tweaked, that it didn't seem like it might be, but ultimately it might be. And so that dialogue with the DM, keeping that balance.
So having a player that really thinks things through is really helpful. And does a lot of the work is also very helpful. But this is a good opportunity for something as drastic as fundamentally drastic as saying, hey, instead of strength, can I use dex for this thing? That's a pretty big change for a class. It's quite huge. And if you can't find a satisfactory, if you can't think it through, or they can't think it through, you have to be willing and like really ready to say no, because if you say yes, then it could ruin the game for everybody else at the table, because to them they're like, well, I colored within the lines, and I'm getting punished for that.
Yeah.
And that's not fun. Like, I had an idea to do something like that, and now Mickey's just doing this and this and this, which thankfully she's not, because we had that conversation. We really thought it through. So Mickey limiting herself in that and not like seeking a game-breaking mechanic right now, because you probably could, but also just being like, hey, I've already thought this through. I think this would be good, and it's still in the same vein as the rule, and it's just kind of like this lateral move instead of a step completely up in a different direction. But you got to be willing to say no for the sake of the table at that point, and then find other ways to, if you do say no, be like, all right, let's find other ways where you could get this flavor
doing it some other way
without breaking the actual mechanics of the game.
Booyah. Next question, another minus.
Character questions.
Yeah.
All right, this is from Ben Marty. This is for Jacob. Oh, hey.
Hey, Ben.
Jacob talks about how the character of Lance is very similar to him in a way, and how they both always are very cautious and wary. The character Max is very different. He seems as if he doesn't care what happens, trusting fate. Jacob, has this contrast to your personality challenged your RP?
Good question.
No.
That's a great question.
I am very similar to Lance, and I plan out things, or I research things meticulously before I commit to something. However, doing that always play like that. That's what my mind always does. I always play the devil's advocate in anything I face. And because of that, oftentimes the devil's advocate says, screw it, just go for it. Well, what's going to happen? And so to just lean into that and just be like, yep, we're doing it. It's almost like my mind has already done that for a long part of my life. I've just never actually committed to it. And to be able to do that where there's literally actually no real world effects is awesome. So yeah, it's been really fun. It's definitely a different, obviously, focus, and that's what I wanted to do, to just really kind of change the game and change a little bit of how I can approach things as we role play and go on our journey.
All right, next up, that is a plus.
Oh, no.
Okay, good, because I'm really excited about this question. And I think it's a little ambiguous, and so I want to get your thoughts on what the actual question is. Captain Blue Nova again said, what sort of safety nets do you have in place while recording?
Yes, some additional context had come with this question. In some of the bloopers that we have released to our patrons, we had one where we talked about my audio cutting out, needing to use the backup, etc., etc. So that is the main safety net that we have, since this is primarily an audio medium. If at any point one of our computers decides for whatever reason that it doesn't want to give us a good working audio file, that's not great. And so what we do is, in addition to each of us recording our audio separately on our individual computers, I have a program called Audio Hijack, and what it does is I can put various audio sources into it, and it will record them all into another file. So I have Discord, which we record and being recorded, all the audio from the application, along with the audio from my microphone being piped into the same little audio recording device that then saves as an MP3. I send that over to Mickey. And one thing that I have done as well as an extra layer of backup, since I am the one running the backup recording, it would be really bad if like my power went out during the middle of recording. So I've gotten what's called a UPS. It's an uninterrupted power supply, I think is technically what it is, but basically it's a big battery bank that you plug into your wall, and then you plug your computer into it, so that even in the event of something like a power outage, you still have a certain amount of time that you can keep using your computer. Make sure you get all of your files like saved before you have to turn it off. So those are the safety nets that we have in place while recording.
That's awesome. Every single one of us, I think, at one point, I've had to use a backup a couple of times that our audio just cut out, or we lost audio, or we didn't realize it stopped recording.
Full episodes.
And we've lost full episodes before, and I've had to go in and use it. And so that safety net is so important to have just in case. Now, luckily, that has not happened for a very long time, but it is always so important for us to have the safety net. Can I also propose a different kind of flip of this question? Because the way that I read it the first time, I think also has some interesting implications for it. Because there's like the physical safety net, like all the things that Ned just said. What kind of safety nets, I don't know if I want to use the word emotionally, interpersonally, do we have while playing at a table like this? What safety nets do we have as when your character's in conflict but players are not in conflict? What do we have when things come up like that, so that our relationships stay intact playing a game based on conflict?
Well, I'll say 10 seconds worth of stuff and then leave it to you. But I think it's the DM's job to really establish the environment to where that's allowed, right? And so to make sure that everybody's aware coming in outside of recording, outside the game, and that, hey, this is what's going to happen, and we are going to be friends. We're not going to say or do anything that's going to challenge this. And there's my 20 seconds.
Well, it's not what you were just saying.
I think we've been pretty fortunate in that, like, those of us who went to college together, sorry, Josh, you didn't go to college with us. I wish you could have. That would have been really cool.
That'd have been awesome.
Yeah, I didn't go to college.
But, like, we have been in performance opportunities before. I met all of these people in theater working on shows. And even though, like, I didn't know Jacob and Mickey as well as Thomas did, I still had a sense of like who they were from various interactions I'd had with them. So we've been fortunate that we already kind of know how each other works. We've been fortunate that we knew how Josh works because we've listened to so much Sneak Attack. And for those of you who are playing with people that maybe you don't know as well, there are plenty of good safety tools out there. Some that I would point to in particular, the X card is a really popular one. The idea is it's based off the idea that if you're playing at a physical table, you have an index card that has an X drawn on it and you put it in the center of the table. And if at any point something happens that is making somebody really uncomfortable, they just reach out and touch the X card, and they don't have to explain why they touched the X card. You just change the direction of the story from where it was going and keep moving on in that direction. Another technique that is used a lot is lines and veils, where before a campaign starts, each person will write down, these are my hard lines. These do not appear in the story. I don't want to deal with them. I don't want to deal with racism and systemic oppression. I don't want to deal with slavery, those kinds of topics. But then the veils are things that's like, we're okay with alluding to them, but we don't dig into them. We just kind of fade to black off of that. So those are just a couple tools off the top of my mind that have gotten really popular lately.
I want to say real quick, because I don't know how often this gets into the edit, just because it's kind of like meta talk, but there are multiple moments I can think of throughout recording with you guys where either myself or another person will say like, is it okay if I do this? Or you guys all right if I I have this thought, I want to make sure this is okay. And like there's constant communication happening, and I know that like even between like various of us, like in the various of us playing player characters, have had conversations with Thomas, and we had a whole discussion, I believe, like before we even launched the season, about how, hey, we're going to be pirates, but we also want to remain family friendly. So like this is a line we're going to skirt where we're, it's like we've got, there's family friendly with quotation marks.
We strive.
It's
adjacent.
But like we don't want to go full dark, gory, terrible, like
what
podcast.
Real pirates did.
But I think it's really important that like those conversations are happening. I think that a lot of those tools that Ned mentioned, a lot of times they're used to help give people opportunities for that dialogue. And so I think they're super handy. But I think ultimately the biggest thing that's most important is that you are being like open and communicative with your crew and not bullying past them with like a big swing without like making sure we're okay. You know what I mean?
The more useful communication you have, the more opportunities you and your players will have to explore some really fun stuff.
Yeah, and it's okay to talk about it in the moment while it's happening.
Yeah, you can pause, take a moment.
We can fix it in post.
And then we fix it in post. We often do. We do that a lot.
I would bet money all of the like highly produced shows that are out there are also doing that. So like, you know, social media is really good at showing you like a really pristine version of something, but like, yeah, the real life version of it's slower. Mm-hmm. It has those breaks and moments for people to be human. And so, yeah.
I was just going to say, it's also just, and it took a little bit of time to develop. We were just playing for the first time really actively together, and it took a little bit, but I think we came to the understanding of like anything we do, even if it brings conflict to the party, to the characters and stuff, in the end, we 100% trust each other that we will find a way to make the party better, stronger, and push the story forward. It's not just we've had moments throughout season 1 and we're starting to in season 2 where it's like, well, my character wouldn't like that or would do this. And we trust each other to act as the character, but at the same time, it won't be an end all like, screw you. Somehow we will work in our minds and together and then just trust to how is this going to make me come back to this person, come back to this character, and find a way, not just to mend maybe what happened, but to make it almost build it into something stronger and especially attach it to the story.
I want to say real quick, I know we're going long here, but like this is important to me. Like one of the things that has been like was such a huge confirmation about like jumping in and joining you guys with this season was my ability to like have my family interrupt moments. And before we started recording season 2, everybody said like, look, we've all done it. We've all had to stop because the family thing happened. We've all had to change schedules because kids got sick or something like that. And so but it's one thing to like say that, but then I remember early on, if I could remember the exact moment, I'd pull it. But there's one episode where like we maybe recorded like 10 minutes of it or like got maybe 20 minutes in, and I had to leave. I had to leave and go help with baby stuff. And I remember feeling the conflict of like, oh, I bet they're regretting like me. You know what I mean? Like that. It's like, you get in your head with this stuff. And then immediately I get an email from Thomas with a $50 gift card for Kelsey and I to go get like food somewhere and a really sweet message. Aww. And that was one of those things where like, where I think I know Kelsey isn't ever on this podcast but she's super comfortable with me being on it, and she supports like me like joining the cast and like committing to this, and which has been just a real. So yeah, I feel like you guys are definitely like kindred spirits of that, like what's most important and whatnot, and it's been a really great experience. I think a lot of that interrelational, like we're not just trying to churn content out or. But actually, like enjoying each other's company and being friends.
Yeah.
Imagine
like asking about each other's lives and all that stuff. That's all happening, guys. Like that's like to me it makes
are very long.
It makes the show of it like a richer thing, because of the richer things happening outside of it.
Booyah. All right, next question. That is a minus.
Yay.
Character questions. All right, definitely not Batman. This is back to Mickey. It says, was Sandara, or Mickey and kind of Thomas too, was Sandara always meant to be a foil for Ignis? Or did they just naturally develop their antagonistic relationship? Was it an intentional choice or something that just happened? These interactions are hilarious. Also, when will they become best friends?
Would you say that it was their relationship naturally developed, or was thrust upon the campaign by Ignis's just blatant, nope, don't talk to me?
Some are born foils, some achieve foilness, and some have foilness thrust upon them.
I just really dislike Thomas, and so I felt like Zendara was...
I remember it happening. I remember watching it in real time. Thomas is just playing this character, and Ignis decided her character did not like him. And there's like a twinkle in Thomas's eye where he's like, "Here we go."
Oh, yes. Yeah.
He goes, "Yes, and."
And yeah, that's one of those D&D moments where I had no reason to think that. Just the very first time she talked, I was just like, Ignis is going to dislike this person. And that has informed every other interaction that they've had beyond that. It's just that yes-anding. So back and forth every time, it just becomes building on each other because I made a decision once, and that's how it was.
And there we go. And aren't we all better for it?
Will they become BFFs? No. Will she kill Zendara before that happens?
It's great to have a B. It's great to have a B plot. You know what I mean? It's good to have a
B plot going on.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right, next up, another minus, our final character-specific
All right.
question.
Yeah.
This one goes to Ned from Ben Marty. Ned
Ben.
mentioned that he regretted finishing Fleeple's arc too quickly in season 1. I have noticed that this season your character seems very complicated. That's a lot of backstory. Is that intentional?
You know, it is, in fact.
Hey!
As I spent some time reflecting on the backstory that I gave to Thomas for Fleeple, it was pretty bare bones. Like I've said in previous talkbacks, it was like, Swamp Lizard lives in swamp, does Swamp Lizard things, there's my backstory. And that is such a bare bones gift to give to your DM. There's so little information to extrapolate from with all of that. So in order for me to give Thomas a good opportunity to, like, Thomas's job, he wants to make this story about our characters. He wants to make it involved and meaningful for each of us as individuals. And if I give Thomas a bare bones gift of a backstory, how can he give me back the gifts of the involvement of that backstory into the campaign? Like, Fleeple didn't get the moments that Malamara had with, trying to work stuff out with her brother in her memoryscape. Didn't get to have the moments that Lance had meeting up with Lottie back at Lottie's place. He just kind of was along for the ride being a Bahamut zealot, and that was pretty much it.
There's a great moment of improv of the more you give, the more you are able to receive, right?
So it was a very deliberate thing that I made Ataraxia a lot more complex, and I basically completely opened up the doors wide to Thomas to be like, hey, the entire realm of the Fae is at your disposal. Have fun, my dude. So
With arms wide open.
exactly. And yeah, that is just exactly my stuff, is all of the weird Fae tricksy shenanigans. And we've already seen some of that in future episodes that have happened after the episodes that we're talking about in this Word of Recall. And
We'll
Yes,
talk about
we
the next
have.
talk back.
Yes.
We have.
There's something to be said for like prepping a character for a long form campaign versus like just
Like a short
making
form.
a short form character real quick.
One thing I want to add real quick, just on that note, is a blend of how much do you prepare versus how much do you not prepare. There's a principle in an RPG I really like called Dungeon World, and the principle is draw maps, leave blanks. Like, it's okay to have landmarks on your map so that you can know the major plot points, these major landmarks that you can orient yourself to, but don't draw in everything in between them. Let yourself discover what happens in between those landmarks as you go. There we go. Now we've just got... We'll lump minuses in with blanks because we still have a lot of campaign moment questions left. It's a plus.
Perfect. This is the last one, and then Joshua can ask all the rest of the
I think we've covered some of the ground of the blank questions, but yeah,
Cool.
go ahead.
All right. Mark the Rock, with periods in the middle, says, I'm curious if you guys have thought about waiting for D&D 5.5 to come out, or if you've thought about changing some stuff as it comes out, similar to how Ned changed Fleeple's kobold mechanics with the release of Monsters of the Multiverse in Season 1.
We will not be changing until all three at the earliest all three books are released. I think I answered that in our Patreon or in Discord. I want it to be a clean transition for myself, and then also for everybody else as well, because that's a lot. It's a lot, and we don't know what erratas they're going to come out with in the next 6 months after official publications as well.
Plus, you are converting it from Pathfinder to this new system, and then you'd have another new system.
Yeah, we know you're balancing a bunch of plates on sticks, but here's a couple balls to juggle while you're doing that.
No.
Yeah, easy.
Yeah, it's something that we want to put a lot of consideration into if we're going to make that change. Like, when we started recording for season 2, it's like, okay, we know this is on the horizon, but we don't want to wait any longer to start playing.
Yeah.
So we're going to look through the rule books, we're going to weigh the merits of the upgrades and whatnot, and we'll see what happens.
Yep.
Now, next question, what will it be? It's a campaign moment question. Look at that.
Shock.
Hey!
Who's your favorite NPC? Girdle Rock asks.
Sandara.
I
knew it.
Honestly,
I knew it.
I agree. Yeah, I think Sandar's
Yeah?
my favorite as well.
See,
Just the most
love-
interesting. I think there's layers to unpack to her. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, and I love how she's just solid, she's stable, she's ride or die, but not in like a weird way like Glenlivet is.
Cedar horse!
Yeah, she knows what she's doing, she's very even-minded about stuff, just a real good person to bounce ideas off of. And that's a very valuable thing to have as a captain.
I love me some Fishhook, but he is a bit of a one-note character thus far.
Thomas, could you flesh out your NPCs a little
Can you
farther?
give
for
him a
these?
little bit more backstory, please?
I know. Could you stop hating them at every opportunity, Mickey?
I will say one of my favorite lines was like, "So you want a pizza or something like that?" Like in the.
Oh yeah.
You know, like a pizza or something.
Now, here's the thing. I'll be happy to spend more time down in the kitchens with fish guts. So if you want opportunities to flesh out your NPC, I can give you those.
This is not an NPC with a name, but I liked the birds only because it was a fun moment of yes and that Thomas had these birds and then he was like, there's multiple birds. And I was like, I'm gonna have to put that in post or I'll just do it live and then I'll pitch it up later. And so it was fun to like, we've had those moments before in the podcast too, of just like Thomas is doing something. We're like, yeah, we're just going to jump on top of that outside of our own character. So I like the birds because I got to play it as a character. I got to be an NPC. Thomas did not invite me to do that. I just did.
Can I say
Sorry,
a little
Thomas.
like a little thing that I don't even know if it. I don't think it got caught in the edit at all. But if memory serves, when that moment initially happened, I think I was maybe either like super tired or like kind of like I was hazy in my brain for some reason. I distinctly remember you started repeating Thomas and then I started repeating you. And I think I stopped partway through and was like, why was I doing that? I think it was just
You
like
did.
it was one
I
of
thought
those
you were gonna
just
keep going and you didn't.
I had no idea what you were doing. I was just so like tired out of
Yes,
my
and.
mind that I was like, it was just Josh confused. And
Yeah, if you go back and listen, the first couple of birds, they have like 3 voices
Oh,
and then you
boy.
stopped.
The other bird's like,
I
I'm
stopped
bored.
because I was like,
You're
what
just
am I
making
doing?
like bird sound. Like, yeah, you were just
Yeah.
like making the sounds and then
It
you
was a
stopped.
yes
I
and.
just
boy.
I got
Oh.
swept
And then
up
he
in the
went,
moment.
no, but...
Listen, when I was a kid in school and the teacher would read a book, I'd act out the actions at the desk, and I didn't realize I was doing it till she told me to stop. So like so when I'm not thinking, I start mimicking, and that was just a real life zone out moment. Like I was so into the story that I started repeating you.
Water Elemental. I like that one just because it was almost like a story that won't be fully told, just exactly what happened and what went down.
And it just is what it is.
It reminded me, I don't watch this show at all, but I know this moment just because I've seen it pop up on social media and just, I remember friends talking about it. If you know the show Futurama, talking about the dog that one of the main characters has and how it's been waiting
Fry's dog.
for someone to come back for so long. And I like immediately when Thomas started like connecting those to like the story or like connecting the dots where we're like, oh, this water elemental's been here like a long time. I just imagined that moment of like just this water elemental waiting for a friend to come back that unfortunately never will. On that note,
If you guys are okay, I don't know that we need the rickety hate question. Unless you really want to answer it, but I don't know that I have an answer to this one, but I'll read it here. I guess you guys tell me. But another one from Girdle Rock. I am not familiar with the Skulls and Shackles setting. Is there a faction or place you are interested or in interacting with in the world?
Ned?
Yeah,
Oh,
really, it's a
hi.
Ned question.
That's a Ned question.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely put the most research into the world of Galarian. The rest of us are just kind of along for the ride, which, Ataraxia is certainly just along for the ride. I've talked a little bit. I'm not sure how much I've talked in the campaign about where Ataraxia is from. He's from the city of Absalom, which is like this central island city that is like the cultural metropolitan hub of all the civilizations of the world. And it's the place where Aroden, the god of humanity, there was like this whole big thing that happened. The Starstone fell from the sky, there was a sundering, and Aroden claimed the Starstone from the bottom of the ocean, became the first ascendant god, and built this beautiful city around the temple that he built to house this Starstone. And so it's like where all of the cultures in Galarian meet. And Ataraxia grew up on the docks there because his mother worked in the taverns along the docks and whatnot. I think that could be a really fun place to go. I also, like I mentioned, I'm super into all of the Fae stuff. Just a fun little bit of Galarian lore, the way they handled the Fae realm is they call it the first world in the sense that when the gods were crafting Galarian, they'd had a rough draft and they're like, this place is a little too weird. That's the first world. And then they created Galarian as the prime material plane. And so I think it would be really fun to check out some Feywild stuff, some first world stuff, as it were. I think it could be really fun to go to the elemental plane of Earth if we can convince Buster to do that. But generally speaking, like the Shackles as a region, when the Starfall happened, there was an entire civilization that was just shattered up into all of these islands, and the ocean came in and swallowed a whole bunch of stuff. So it's just a really cool place in and of itself, and that there's so much hidden in there. There's so many, it's just full of people like us, these free captains, just freebooting around the ocean, seeing what they can find. So, I'm totally happy to just bump around within the Shackles as well, because there's tons of cool stuff in there. Okay, next question.
It's our last question.
That's it.
And I don't know that it even needs to get answered, but it's just like, do we trust Rickety Hake?
Time will tell.
No, I trust Rickety Hake.
Yeah,
That's fair.
I mean, if
I don't
we don't
think
trust him, we
Thomas
can just push him
expected
over.
anybody to I don't think Thomas expected anybody to distrust him, and then all of a sudden Josh is like, I do not trust him at all, and Thomas had the same gleam of like, oh really? So now maybe not so much.
I
think initially
Distrust,
he
you
was
say.
it was born. A lot of that was born off of that chimeras are usually made, not like creatures of nature. And I was like, did Rickety Hake make chimeras and then lure people out there with myth to feed them? I was like,
Well, I think, regardless of Rickety's intentions before we went on that journey there, a wonderful gift to give to a DM is a little bit of insecurity that they can latch into.
Yeah.
So,
Buster's not lacking in that. He's an
insecurity.
replete with insecurity. Yeah.
yeah.
Rickety sends his regards.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Yeah. And
Wow.
I think it would be so freaking cool if we went to that giant whirlpool and found Rickety Hake's original captain, still out there doing something crazy. That would be super
The
rad.
hurricane.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's right.
Even if it comes down to it, and it ultimately is, Rickety Hake is just a chill guy who was offering you a job opportunity. Just the fact that there is that insecurity that's going on there, just the fact that we don't know what's up with the worm box and why it's so weird, just that little bit of room that the DM can play around with adds a lot of fun spice to a campaign.
I'm sure we won't encounter any more things to be suspicious of anybody in the
No
Yeah,
following
for
game.
sure.
at all.
Definitely not ever.
Well, folks, what a fun word to recall. Great questions. Great bonus time for this word of recall. We hope you've enjoyed it. We've enjoyed just gabbing away about this campaign that we love most, and that we are doing just new things and fun stuff in the world of Galarian. Keep a lookout for future episodes, as have been hinted heavily in this word of recall, for fun stuff that's on the horizon, and crazy stuff, or at least we think crazy stuff coming up. But yeah, as always, Ned, Ned, Jacob, Josh, Mickey, thank you so much for joining us on this Word of Recall. And listeners, thank you. If you want to reach out to us, you can do our patron exclusive Discord, which surprisingly got a lot of shout outs on tonight's podcast. You can join our patron exclusive Discord, where you can drop these questions at any time, even if the Word of Recall is months away. Or you can do what some of the other people like Actual Vampire has been doing on there and dropping your timestamp theories and favorite moments from the most recent
Those are great.
episode that was dropped. It's
love the
really helpful for us
timestamp.
to be able to go through. Timestamps save lives. That's all I'll say. But we want to give a shout out, of course, to Improv Tabletop with Ned there. They do some talkback episodes as well. Did you do that as well for the most recent one, or was that just the Blades of the Dalfay?
Yeah, in fact, the day that this episode is getting released should be the same day that our talkback for Varick World is getting released. Look at that.
Hey.
I didn't even realize
Hop
that
on
until
over there,
just exactly
folks.
this moment.
You just finished this. Get on over there.
Go.
Just go.
Just go. What are you still
outta
doing
here.
here?
We don't need
Get
you here
outta
anymore.
Don't call me. Don't come
Oh
by
my
my
gosh. And another shout out. Go give Titans of Altera a listen if you haven't already, or it's Sneak Attack, of course, where it all began, as we're all say, where Josh takes a turn as a player or GM, DM, wherever you are joining their adventures there. But as always, I'm Thomas, your DM, and around the table we've had
I'm Mickey, and I play Ignis Halcon.
I'm Jacob, and I play Maximus Shans.
I'm Ned, and I play Ataraxia Kalian.
I'm Buster Bilgewater, and Josh thinks he's playing me, but I'm in control.
Let's keep that fire going, everybody, and get on out of here.
I'm not afraid anymore.
I'm Buster Bilgewater.
I just know, I know,
Gosh.
I know most people will just be done listening by that point, so I was like, I'm just gonna
Oh boy.
go crazy. All right.